Welcome, everyone. It is our pleasure to be hosting our very first online peer exchange of Eurelectric's innovation track Beyond Digital. My name is Marianne, and I will be your moderator today. Let me just begin saying that we are extremely happy to see so many of you connected today, which clearly shows the importance and relevance of today's topic. We are already reaching almost 200 attendees, and we see the number is continuously growing. So it is going to be a very promising online exchange. Before we move ahead, let's just quickly walk through some housekeeping elements. Those of you who are visiting the GoToWebinar platform for the very first time, you see on the right side of your screen the webinar panel or tool. What is very important here is that we want to make it as interactive session as possible. So please do submit your questions through the question box using the question box on your screen, and do not use the chat box because this will be used for troubleshooting only. And important to note that if your question is directed to a specific speaker, then please indicate exactly to whom. Throughout the sessions, we will be collecting your questions and we'll be reading them out to panelists at the end during the Q&A session. We will also be launching a couple of polls, so be ready to submit your answers. Okay. Trying to move to the next slide. So before we delve into today's agenda, let us just very quickly give you a bit of context on the Beyond Digital platform. The platform is targeting AI, innovation, big data, and digitalization experts from key utilities across Europe, but also from companies who provide their services in the power sector, who provide software solutions, or any other who have their stake in the power sector. Together with these experts, we will exchange, discuss, and analyze the game-changing role of big data and AI and digital solutions and technologies. We will look at how these solutions provide new opportunities, create new business models, but also we will look at how to be prepared for different risks and challenges related to that. So why are we doing this? We do this because our end goal is to put together a jointly branded and co-authored AI vision for the power sector in the post-digital age. And how do we do it? We do it through 3 online exchanges, the first of which is happening here today. And then these will be followed by 3 in-person workshops, end of October at European Utility Week, end of November in Brussels, and then in May next year at the Eurelectric Power Summit. So make sure to sign up to this platform. You will find the platform overview on the webinar site on our website. And also get in touch with us and ask any of your questions through the email that you see on the screen here. Okay. So going into today's agenda. Firstly, we will give the microphone to Eurelectric's Secretary General, Christian Ruby. Christian will take us through the importance of AI and digital solutions and technologies for the power sector. After him, we will hear from industry examples how AI can bring real value to utilities. We will first hear from Christian Arnold, who is the Managing Director and Senior Vice President of Innovation at EWE. After him, we will hear from Giuseppe Amoroso, who is the Head of Digital Strategy and Governance at Enel. Their presentations will be followed by a joint presentation from Microsoft, brought to us by Vanessa Miller and Adina Braha-Honchus. Vanessa is the Director of Energy Innovation and Impact at Microsoft, and Adina is the Government Affairs Manager. After them, we will hear from Eurelectric's Strategic Communications Advisor, Daria Mustafayeva, who will give us a broad overview of the EU's digital agenda. And we will close the session with our interactive and Q&A session. So now, before we move on to our first speaker, we have prepared for you this very first poll question that we kindly asked you to participate in. And with this poll question, we would like to know to what extent you would say that AI and digital solutions are used in your organization or company. Can we launch the poll, please? The options are either you think your organization is a super user, that AI is used really in all operations, or you would think that you're a developed user, meaning that it's used in many operations but still expanding, or you're a basic user, or finally, if you are just a beginner and only starting to explore your options. We will give you a little time to give your answers. We see that some of you already have done so. And let me remind you once again that the question box is a very valuable tool throughout this webinar, because it's very important that we can collect your questions and feedback and then present these during the Q&A. Okay, I think we can close the poll now and share the poll results. We see that most of you think that you are still only a beginner, and 44% exactly. 35 of you think that you're a basic user, 18% are already developed user, which is a good number, and only 3% are a super user. So we see that there is room for development there. But now, without further ado, I kindly ask Christian to unmute yourself, put on your video, and we hand the microphone over to you so you can talk us through the importance of AI in the power sector.
Thank you, Marianne, and good afternoon. Good to see so many attendees for this the webinar. I think our count is now beyond 220. So very glad that you've all taken the time to join this, in my view, very important discussion. I think Marianne already, let's say, alluded to some of the things. Why are we doing this? What is this all about? And so on and so forth. I'll say a bit more about this. Why is it that the utility industry body in Brussels takes on this topic? Why now, and in what shape and form? And maybe the easiest way is to basically explain a little bit about the title that we've chosen, Beyond Digital. What is that all about? And post-digital, what do we mean by that? In essence, our sector has been dealing with digital for a quarter of a century or more. You'll remember the discussion about smart grids. We've had that for more than 20 years, and all the utilities have in place some IT systems that are governing their customer databases and so on and so forth. So we're all digital by now. The question is there something that is changing right now and something we need to understand? And we believe there is. We believe that we are moving into an age now that goes way beyond the digital paradigm, goes way beyond what we've seen before, and entails a number of game changers for our industry, but I would even argue for society at large, that we need to understand, that we need to process, and that we need to take into account when shaping our business models, running our companies, and structuring our operations, and talking to policymakers, of course. For us, this beyond and this game-changing new thing that's happening is about AI, as Marianne said, but in fact, it's about a bit more. It's about a set of interconnected technologies, a set of exponential technologies that go together and that in combination are putting us on the cusp of what I believe is going to be a real paradigm shift. We're talking about big data. The sheer amount of data that we have today is so vast that it allows us to basically process it in different ways and see new patterns in it. And it also forces us to use it differently and perhaps think of it less as big data and more as thick data, describing instances, people, and technological phenomena in specific ways. But there is a fundamental game-changing thing happening in relation to the sheer amount of data out there, which is one crucial constituent component of this new paradigm that we believe is emerging. The second thing is the proliferation of a number of technologies that are basically producing that data, whether it's smart sensors that are appearing in our homes, appearing on our grids, appearing all over the place, that allow us basically to produce more data, to track things and to produce information. That is another critical element in this. Cameras that basically provide us with enormous amounts of data and together allow us to basically see new patterns and track the behavior of people, track the behavior of our assets, and so on and so forth. A third component in this new paradigm for me is the sheer processing power. We hear some people say that Moore's law is now coming to an end, and that computing power will no longer develop at the speed that we've seen in recent decades. I personally see that every time a certain technology, let's say, reaches its full potential, we see technology substitution, we see new technologies emerge that allow this pace of processing computing power basically to continue, and therefore I remain one of the more bullish on this. I think we'll continue to see this higher and this increase in computing power, which is also a crucial element in this new technological paradigm that we're facing. A fourth element is the advances, the massive advances we're seeing in robotics. We're seeing increasingly automated, autonomous robots in a number of fields, whether it's drones, whether it's vehicles, or other types of more specifically dedicated robots in more concrete and focused functions. So and last but not least, the fifth component in this new paradigm is the artificial intelligence, the ability of computers to learn on their own, learn by themselves, neural networks and deep learning methodologies of different kinds that allow computers to be much more autonomous and be much more active in basically learning and developing their capabilities of pursuing complex objectives. I've sometimes been joking that AI stands for automated ignorance, and you can get that feeling when you talk to Siri and you want her to do something and she just doesn't get it, and you try again and again. What's really behind this is that actually you're talking to your phone. Actually, your phone does understand what you say. It doesn't know exactly how to compute it or process it, and may not know exactly what you imply by all these things. The fact is, nevertheless, that what we would have thought completely impossible a few years ago, that you have a real conversation with your phone and can ask it to do stuff for you, is now reality. And I believe that 5 years down the line, we're asking completely different things from our digital personal assistants than we are today. So in actual fact, artificial intelligence is not about automated ignorance. It's about a very fast-moving technology that allows computers to do much more for us and to take on much more complex tasks and solution providing for us. I think you've all heard the stories, probably most of you who deal with this, about how computers started beating up chess experts, and then it was Go experts. The one sort of wow moment for me was an article I read last year about how a number of AI agents succeeded in beating up humans in Quake 3. Quake 3 is a first-person shooters game where you run around in a maze, and in one of the versions of the game, you have to basically you have to capture the flag of the enemy. You're working in teams, and that means that there's a set of very, very complex elements to this task. You are navigating a three-dimensional maze. You are basically faced with an enemy that is coordinating, that is agile, that is shifting strategies. You have no chance of finding out how they want to do things, whether they're waiting for you, whether they're coming for you, or whether they have a third tactics. And essentially, what this team of programmers did was basically to develop a number of AI agents to beat up humans in this task. The agents had no other visibility and knowledge of the game than what they could see on the screen and the control of the keyboard. And these AI agents were able, within a given number of iterations, to basically beat the crap out of human beings, which is scary, but also very interesting. And it turned out that the only way that human beings could win against the machines in this game was by teaming up with AI. And I think this whole notion of people being forced to team up with AI in order to win in the future is absolutely crucial for us to understand how we go forward here. Let me just unmute for a second. So what does all that have to do with the power sector? How do we how does computer playing relate to what we do in the power sector, running electric operations for the European continent? Well, I would say a whole lot. Actually, I would argue that no CEO can afford to ignore the reality of this new technological paradigm. Think cybersecurity. Once your enemies that want to that want money from you, or want to basically freeze your company, possess these technologies and apply AI to a botnet attack, or a similar sort of exercise where they want to steal your code or your passwords. Think about when your competitors basically have AI optimization to their trading and to their hedging, and where that puts you. Essentially, to make it very blunt, I think that, you know, entering a space where all your competitors have AI is like rocking up to a sword fight with a banana. You're going to get sliced. So so any CEO in our sector will need to deal with this and find out how their strategy and how their organization is going to be adapted to this new reality. There's a number of things that we just have to do as companies in order to survive in such a new technological paradigm. But there's also a whole bunch of really, really significant opportunities to reap. I've seen some stunning cases when it comes to, for example, data application for O&M. When do you do O&M, seasonal O&M on your assets? Turns out that if you apply a new analytical perspective to your N-1 scenarios, all of a sudden you can see completely new things and find out when would be a good time to actually start looking into that interconnector and doing the necessary O&M. We have some really, really fascinating new value propositions also in the retail space. Automated DSR, demand side response, carried out by AI. You just basically plug it in and it optimizes the use of your heat pump in your cottage or at your home, with a view to basically saving money for you and helping optimize the grid in a situation where we have more renewables. So there's a whole bunch of really, really exciting value props waiting for us, and benefits for the broader society as well, if we manage to steer this technology and make the most of it. I'm sure Giuseppe and Christian and others will provide more examples of this. So let me wrap up a little bit by saying a bit about this platform. What does a platform mean for us? As I said in the beginning, for us, this is about going beyond digital. It's about seeing that new fundamental technological paradigm that is emerging. And I'm just going to use 2 more minutes, Marianne, thank you. I also want to say that this goes beyond utilities. We know that we don't know everything about this. We know that there are people that are much smarter than us out there. And that's why we want to have a conversation with technology providers, with energy, with retail, and with policymakers to see how we can get the right regulation to make the most of this technology, to seize the gigantic potential it holds for customers and for society. I think a significant part of the mindset in this new paradigm is about humility. It's about being aware of the fact that you need to know that there's a lot you don't know. When we look at guys like Ray Kurzweil or Max Tegmark, the thought leaders in this space, they're all saying that when computers are so much smarter than us, well, it just follows that we're not in a new normal, we're in a never normal, because computers are going to be ahead of us all the time, and the best thing we can do is to learn from them and accept that we're all going to be newbies more or less eternally. So the objective of this platform is to basically have that conversation, shape a common view on how to make the most of these technologies, and give some advice to policymakers what is needed in terms of policy direction to make sure that we have accountability, to make sure that we have that we avoid a bias in AI, to make sure that we also basically ensure that humans stay in the loop, because a real risk here is that that basically we get shut out of the equation. So what is the right regulation to ensure this? And once we have that, we believe that there's a huge potential for society to reap, and we will be most delighted to stay in the loop for that, and be part of that process. Thank you very much. I hope that can serve for as some inspiration for the discussions, and I really look forward to hearing from our other contributors here today.
Thank you very much, Christian. Thank you for interesting thoughts. And let me encourage the audience, all of you who would like to ask any questions to Christian, just drop them in the question box so we can pick them up later on from there. And now it's time to look into electricity industry examples. And for that, we ask kindly Christian Arnold to unmute yourself and put on your camera. We will also give you the presentation right to show your screen. Christian is the Managing Director and Senior Vice President of Innovation at EWE. So we are very glad that he is here today with us to present on EWE's experience with using AI. Please, the microphone is yours.
Can you hear me? Hi. I'm very much delighted to be amongst you. Thank you for inviting me and sharing a tiny little view on our AI strategy or digital strategy and what we do as a company here based in the northern part of Germany. And coming back to, yes?
If you can just switch on your camera, that would be lovely as well. Thank you.
Oh, I didn't switch it on. Oh, sorry for that. So you see me now?
No problem. We can see you now, yes.
All right. Okay. So first of all, I would like to give you a three-step way, basically our background as we as a utility company deal with AI and the digital strategy itself. Coming back to Christian's wow moment in terms of AI agent developments in the gaming sector, I think everybody of us who's dealing with innovation and digital strategy has a personal touching moment where we learn something tremendous. And I have similar examples. I won't share them here too much today, but one important step is that working on the digital strategy for a company showed us as EWE that there is a tremendous impact, not just from a technology viewpoint, becoming a digital utility, but basically in the change being a physical platform provider and asking ourselves, how do we rebuild, how do we remodel our company? And as Christian mentioned, not just for us being a utility, but be in a multi-platform competition way ready to engage with the digital ecosystem itself. So in the first step, I would like to show our motivation as EWE, what we have learned and why we did certain things. And then I have 2 breakout sessions just to give you a practical experience on what are we doing with AI technology, how do we incorporate in our core processes, and what do we do in terms of innovation. So being EWE, a utility company in Germany, we have roughly 9 billion in revenue, 10,000 employees working for us. And when it comes to innovation, there's a team behind me with roughly 60 people. And we changed basically our digital strategy and innovation strategy 5 years ago. So we put into a lot of firepower now to get things right for us. So as we learned today already, here's a simple quote, and I think that's something which we have to remember when we reflect our business being a utility. We have a strong DNA by being somebody in an industry responsible for a very critical infrastructure and the backbone of society, actually, when it comes to energy and everybody who is connected to our domain. But what we see and learn how difficult it is to deal with actually the digital transformation and finding our new position by knowing we are just now a tiny little part in a much bigger ecosystem with new roles. And, you know, running away from problems or your problems you see in terms of operations, economical strength, or even the Corona crisis itself and the resilience, everything has to do with your digital performance at the end and the capabilities you have in your company. And if you run away, you never will win. So what are basically the opportunities we have in terms of using new capabilities and skills and technologies, and what is actually our unfair advantage as a utility company or a utility domain in terms of digital platforms? So the first thing I would like to give you here is an emotional quote in terms of what we have learned. And that's, let me put it like, it's speed, time. Time matters and things are changing fastly and sometimes unexpectedly. Yeah. When you look into the old Detroit years, you know, there have been huge incumbents, huge players in markets, dominant players like we are in the utility landscape. Or when you go to the Silicon Valley, it was a totally different area of, you know, economical growth and sexiness to this understanding of what is the Silicon Valley today. When you look in Detroit's area today, you see that over time, a long period of time now, something dramatically changed. And the same, you also could imagine it happened to the Silicon Valley itself. So basically the question is, what is our self-understanding? How do we deal actually with our DNA and what we have in our company? It's an interesting quote here. As you see, St. Peter's Square and St. Petersburg, a lot of people, and that's basically the new normal. Everybody is digital, is connected, and trying to use and get the most out of its moment. But we all turn into sensors. We all turn into a virtual, collectible, and interpretable data point, which allows us to learn and move further in the understanding. When it comes to our strategy work at EWE a couple of years ago, we learned that our economical drivers as well in terms of digital disruption and what we see totally change. Yeah, so if you look in the market capitalization, and you know those charts, there are not the big 5, 10 players anymore, which are basically physical infrastructure provider. It's all digital driven. Yeah? So, and it has something very much to do how we unlock the value out of your data sources and how you think in your company and provide data thinking to your organization that you are capable to also unlock the value out of energy data. Some very interesting observations which we made a couple of months ago is that the firepower which is reflecting to our market is tremendous. So there's a lot of money coming toward the energy domains in terms of digital. So new incumbents we do see, but all industries are incorporating and are moving into, from a digital standpoint, into the energy domain. And when it comes to participation in terms of innovation and participation on digital platforms and capabilities in the race of how do you secure AI capabilities in your domain, we see that non-utility industries spend 8 times more money and firepower is much higher in other industry, reflected to the engagement with the energy domain. So we have to wake up and we have to do something, and we have to really get an understanding of where is the impact and what do we have to do as a utility company. So time and speed and things you don't see is a huge impact, and you may don't oversee the next 2 to 3 years now how your business model will be reflected, but it will tremendously change and there will be no brick on its other. So the building you are creating here is something totally new, and it starts always with the foundation, and what kind of foundation you lay in your company has to do with the skills. So we worked on our vision and said, okay, when we know that the digital impact in AI technology and the skills we need and the opportunities we see in terms of business innovation and resilience into our company is data-driven, it has to do something with that we have to really rethink our organization. So as Christian mentioned in his opening speech is that he said, well, there's a strong technology impact on this AI development. We totally see that, and we have to have tools in our organization to participate from this kind of developments. But it's much more than technology. It has to do also something with your business model architecture, your understanding how you create value out of your data potential you have, how you use the AI, but it also has very much to do with what kind of skills do you have in your organizations and how you look at the end in your value chain and remodel your value chain itself. So now I would shift to break out sessions and to give you a short impact on what we do on one hand on our customer front, and another one more in our direction, what actually does AI technology with us becoming a digital utility in our core scope of our utility supply function. So on the customer front, we see huge potential in terms of leveraging and unlock the data pools which we access through smart meter technologies and in application services which we bring to our customers. So behavioral analytics and disaggregation capabilities is something which we see are coming into the market. But what we have learned is to becoming relevant on the customer side, we have to create a platform which provides not just the usual energy transparency services which we deliver and see amongst all of our utility landscape. So what is energy data at the end? It's something where you collect something, where you engage with an infrastructure, or where you engage with a behind ecosystem, and you compare with other data, with other industry at the end. So in energy data, we see a huge potential regarding our B2C environment, and there we funded multi-partner cooperation with other utilities amongst, and we are working to create a multi-partner cooperation platform regarding our B2C customers, with roughly at least 100 million customers on that platform, and we do this on an alliance approach. One learning what we had with going into a digital strategy to our end customers is if you want to become relevant, you need a strong alliance, and it means you have to find complementary partners to leverage your capabilities and create new value so that your customers really are attracted to your solution. So where do we see basically the activity field? I talked about the application layer to that, but you see we have partnerships working in this platform initiative where we use on existing energy data. We leverage this with different other industry ecosystems. For example, in the elderly care context, something very interesting actually in terms of the corona pandemic, which we currently see. How do you take care of your loved ones, especially the risk groups, which we see the elderly, and energy data has a great value in seeing and interpreting and seeing how they are doing and connecting them with their loved ones and giving them a hit of if everything is all right or not. So OEM industry, or if you even go to the insurance industry. So bringing those co-competitors actually together and creating new services and distributing them to your customer base, which you have, is something very important. When it comes to each utility itself, especially in Germany, like having more than 1,000 utilities, or in Europe being even broader, you see we have a very fragmented market. And becoming successful in the digital ecosystem means also for us, in terms of being successful as a digital platform to our customer base, is we as a utility have to shift our DNA and build alliances to have the customer potential to become relevant on one hand, but also compete against other alliances which are engaging towards our industry, as I earlier mentioned, like the automotive industry, like BMW and Daimler. They build joint alliances of Volkswagen and Ford. Why do they do that? Because they learn they are too small for themselves to be successful by their own. And the competitiveness in terms of capabilities and skills is something which we have to bet in as well. So this is just a view in terms of our B2C approach. Now, I would like to also give you a short hint on what we do in terms of our B2B segment, how we, work with our digital team and our AI capabilities towards our being a digital utility perspective. I said we are 60 people in our organization here. We founded a digital factory a couple of years ago. We have a strong data science and AI team here in Germany. And so what we do is we unlock our data value step by step. And here's an example which I took. It's not so much core to the utility, and that's the reason why I actually choose it. We all know demand response, and we know how we have to do with something with generation. There are a lot of examples which we are familiar. I took this here, which is also infrastructure driven, what put us into a very challenging situation. Fiber optics is the new digital backbone, and fiber to the home strategies also explore in Germany as well. So we learned, being an infrastructure provider and having the tools in place, it's very hard to leverage the economic value if you don't use AI-driven technology to have an improper planning tool and find the right locations where you build your infrastructure at the end. So what we did with our data science team, actually, we developed a tool, and we learned that worked so well that our cost savings in terms of the deployment of fiber optics to our customer was so significant that we actually used this software algorithm and put this into place and brought it into the market. So the story behind this is by insourcing new capabilities, new skills in your organization, and building the right ecosystem and prototyping and prototyping environment, you will not just be able to help your core organization process, you will change your company towards a digital utility, but you also, if you do it right, you have the capability to use this kind of creative algorithm and place this into the market, and others will pay for it as well. So it's something times matters here. So, but the learning which we had is at the utility here in the northwestern part in Germany is finding the right skills, bring them in your organization, set them in the right environment, will speed up the learnings, will leverage cost savings, but it will also bring you all the way down to the opportunities which we see in terms of innovation and participation in the business model context and the data ecosystem context especially. So becoming a digital utility for us means, remember, speed matters, and things are changing faster. And as Christian mentioned at the end, maybe we won't be the humans anymore who are making the decisions here. So what does it actually mean? We are those who enable technology for a company and trying to be competitive here. But we also should take into account that we shouldn't take the current situation for granted. There's a huge dynamic cross industry-wise where a lot of firepower comes also towards the utility domain, and we have to be ready to be in a competition available to engage with other industries, and will be part of alliances. And we also should dare to challenge the status quo. Yeah, being an infrastructure company means that 95% of our skills are more or less physical technology driven. And if you work on that and rebuild your organization, it means you have to find new skills, you have to implement them, they bring new culture, they bring new DNA, and this is a tremendous impact in your organization itself. And at the end, we need to remain as flexible as possible while having clear boundaries, which do not limit us to emphasize chances to develop. So therefore, we think it's very important for us that there has to be an ecosystem of excellence. Yeah, when it comes to the platform Kirsten mentioned, clear policy frameworks to set the boundaries is something very important for us also, that we can really scale into this kind of direction. We need an ecosystem of trust. Regulatory frameworks are also there for us, that we know how we have to engage and what we can do and what not. And I think Europe has a very leading forward position here to set the standard, the global standard in terms of GDPR. We made the first steps into it, and that's something which is very important for me to say at the end and give the advice. When you look in terms of the business model incentives which we have as a utility, we are by 95% or even 99% CapEx driven. And the new shift to invest and enable a digital AI-driven digital utility means the current financial ecosystem where we are engaged in is not orientated towards the OPEX investments, which are relevant in terms of your organizational challenges, the skills you bring into the organization. So you have to overcome this strong CapEx view, and being a physical platform provider today and bring in digital skills will meet a huge potential being a digital utility. And this, will make us as a utility much more resilient in terms of crisis management, as we learned over the COVID-19 pandemic, but it will also leverage us to be capable to connect to multi-platforming and be a potential digital utility and a data ecosystem at the end. So I'm done with basically my presentation. I'm looking forward to your questions. I hope I could give you a short insight about our motivation, what drives us here, but also how we handle things. And in terms of the quote you had at the beginning, being a beginner or a developer or a super power user or whatever, I still would say we are still a beginner. I feel very humble when it comes to digital transformation. Thank you so far.
Thank you very much, Christian. Very interesting insights. Because we are just a tiny bit behind the time, we will, without further ado, continue with our next presentation that will be brought to us by Mr. Amoroso from Enel. Giuseppe, if you would turn on your camera, thank you, unmute yourself, and we will make you the presenter as well. Giuseppe Amoroso is the head of digital strategy and governance at Enel. And without further ado, please, the microphone is yours.
So thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. So it's a pleasure for me to be here today, and I really thank Christian and Enel for giving us the opportunity of sharing with you what we have called our data-driven journey. So what does it mean for us to embrace a path, a journey in order to become a data-driven utility? And so I will try to give you in 15 minutes, more or less, a real view about what this journey is for us, and detailing what are the practical and pragmatical steps we have undertaken so far in order to have this path developed at scale in our company. So I will just start from spending a few words about what Enel is. So we are a large multinational company operating in the energy sector, and when it comes to networks, so we are operating more or less 2.5 million kilometers of electrical lines all over the world to serve 74 million customers. And when it comes to renewable energies, we are, I would say, recognized as the world's largest player, operating more than 46 gigawatts so far. And finally, and this is something that we are really proud of, so we have the largest retail customer base in the world, and more or less 70 million customers are buying our product and services in the 33 countries where we operate nowadays. One of the first things I would like to share with you today is our strategic plan. So starting from 2015, when Mr. Starace took office, actually was in 2014, but so starting from the year after. So we have introduced in our strategic plan what we call now our digital strategy, because we recognize the fact that in order to build up the utility of the future, so you cannot set aside digitization, and you have to develop a specific strategy when it comes to the way you want to transform your organization by leveraging on the digital assets and the digital transformation tool. This is why we have introduced what you can see here summarized into the slide. So a comprehensive set of actions focused on giving us the possibility of improving the way we manage our assets, improving the way we interact with our customers, and as well improving the way we engage our people by relying on what? On cloud. So we have moved our 1,500 applications to the cloud, and we have shut down our last on-premise data center in April 2019. Then we have bet on building up global IT platforms used in order to standardize the way we approach our businesses in all the countries where we operate. And for sure, by increasing the level of digitization of our company, so we also increased, I would say, the risk related to the cybersecurity aspects. And this is why we have put into our processes the cybersecurity by design as a mandatory prerequisite in order to have then things done in the proper way. How are we managing all this transformation program? by using Agile as the way we work. So we no longer have a standard organization with, I would say, many hierarchical level and layers to be managed, but we are relying on multi-skills squads which are responsible for delivering solutions to the business challenges, leveraging, of course, on digital technologies and digital innovation. And you can see that at the center of this view, we put what we call data-driven. Data-driven for us means a lot of things that I would like to share with you today. But in the end, data-driven for us is the way we should operate in order to become increasingly more efficient and increasingly more effective. And thanks to this digital strategy, we want to reach and achieve what we call digital impact. You have to consider that in the last 3 years, over the last 3 years, we have invested, when it comes to digital innovation, more than 5 billion euros. And we have achieved in turn, as a result, an impact on our EBITDA of more or less 2 billion euros. So digital innovation is key for us in order to achieve improvements in improving both the bottom and the top line of our P&L by make our processes as efficient as possible, and also by enabling us a new way of doing business and interacting with our customers. And this is why we have put at the center of our activities data. We have launched in January 2019 a new program, and we called this program Data is Power in Our Hands, because we strongly believe that by having the whole organization embracing this new journey, then we will be able to exploit the value, to unveil the value that is now locked into the impressive amount of data we at Enel, but all utilities, I would say, are producing and managing. Just to give you some very, very short examples, this is a standard day at Enel. So we are retrieving from our renewable plants more or less 40 million data records that we are using then to steering and drive our operation and maintenance activities. We are receiving from our smart meters more or less 26 billion load measurements, data points every day. And then, when it comes to the interaction with our customers, so we are interacting with them more than 1.5 million times a day. So this is an impressive amount of data we are retrieving from the businesses we are actually managing. And you can see that this data is actually growing and growing and growing. And we have achieved an impressive level in 2019. So data managed in 2019 were 20 times the data we have managed 10 years before. So this is actually meaning the fact that we are living actually a revolution, because everything is data and data is everywhere. If you think about the typical life we are actually living nowadays. And this is why we thought that our program had to start from setting the rules. We are very large organizations with many businesses inside our organization, and so this is why we need to have what we call data governance framework in order to ensure that data can be accessed in a secure way in compliance with all applicable law and regulations that in our case are very, very strict, I would say. And then we moved to technology. Once rules are in place, then you need technology in order to exploit the value that can be locked into data. This is why we have invested in technology in order to build up our own data platform. And I will dive into this aspect in a minute. And then know-how. Once you have rules, you have technology, you need know-how, because otherwise nobody will be able, to extract value from data. And this is not so, I would say, easy to achieve as a result, but so it's, I would say, to me, key in order to have then a program such our data is powering our ends successfully in the end. And finally, culture. So we have seen that you can invest as much money you want into technology, but without changing the culture of our people that went through a very technical and standard career path, basing on experience and know-how their decision-making processes and approaches. It's very difficult in the end to tell to a technician that is working in our power plants or in our distribution assets, you have to listen to the results of the algorithms in order to understand which is the best maintenance activities to plan. Because most of the time, our colleagues already know what to do based on their gut feeling or their experience and their know-how and so on and so on. And it's very difficult then to have them on board and to get them convinced about the fact that by using artificial intelligence, we can maybe achieve what we call augmented intelligence. So this is actually has to be perceived as an additional tool to improve the way we act every day, but with an impressive potential in front of us that can break through, I would say, the way we have worked so far. Let's spend a few words about what we call data governance framework. So first objective of building up a data governance framework for us was to make data available. So to ensure accessibility to our data that we have seen before, it's a very large amount. So this is why we have built up what we call a data catalog. Everyone in our company now can understand which kind of data we are actually managing. So who's responsible for granting access to a specific data set, and what this data set it's containing and including in terms of information, in terms of updating frequency, so which are the relationship, and the most important thing, thanks to the data catalog, we can also assess beforehand the impact on our algorithms in case some of the data will be modified. And this is something that is very important for us because the larger the amount of data you have to manage, the higher flexibility you need in order not to be locked into, I would say, a system that can become legacy very, very easily. And then data quality. So you have to ensure that you have the proper policy in place in order to make sure that when you are going to consume data, so data is actually, I would say, not affected by quality problems that can lead you to take the wrong decisions based on wrong data. Then we said technology. We went from a situation in which each single global business line was actually sitting on its own data and developing its own solutions. Then Pacman jumped in, and we understand that maybe there is a lot of value by putting data all together, always in compliance with applicable laws and rules and regulations, of course. But whenever you are permitted to do that, things about, for instance, the information that are related to the surrounding environment in which our different assets can operate, you can modify in a significant way the way you develop your solutions. Now we are no longer developing solutions that are tailored and specific for a specific use case, but on the other hand, we are putting in production what we call services. So if you need to have an algorithm that is able to make object detection using deep learning techniques, you can use then the service in order to feed your predictive maintenance algorithm used, for instance, to manage the medium voltage distribution network. But the very same algorithm that can also be used then to approach, and then we will see, another use case in the power generation business, and so on and so on and so on. The very same is done, for instance, with sentiment analysis. So we are using sentiment analysis to understand what's going on outside Enel when it comes to our reputation, but we are also using sentiment analysis, for instance, to make easier for our colleagues from people and organization then to analyze the results of our climate survey, and so on and so on. So each of us can now build up his own solutions by taking from our catalog the microservices we are producing into our global data platform. And in order to do that, you need, as we said before, know-how. And we actually finally realized that, despite the fact that we have built up a very strong AI team, AI central team, including I would say very powerful and very skilled data scientists, machine learning engineers, data engineers, and data developer. Then we realized the fact that maybe it is not enough. Why? Because in this sector, the know-how is evolving very rapidly, and this is why we have created what we call an open ecosystem. We are putting together our internal know-how with the possibility given to us from our open innovation network in order for us to be able then to cooperate with startups, with universities, with data community and artificial intelligence community in order to have access to the proper know-how whenever you need it. And once you have decided that specific know-how is key for your success, then you have to start building up your internal competence. Why? Because it's something that then is strictly related to your success. And this is what we are doing. We are cooperating with everybody in a very open way. And then when it comes to our specific capabilities, we are doing our best in order to build up our talent pool inside the company. And finally, we said culture. So culture, starting from training, it's something that you have to care of. Why? Because training is not only something that you have to tackle in order to give people access to all technical skills needed to develop a powerful algorithms. Then you have to prove that, by using, for instance, communication based on true stories, that this is something that you can actually do. In our case, for instance, we have been able then to develop an algorithm that is helping us in understanding the reason why some of our customers is churning to go to others. And we are using our data scientists, the people from our teams to tell all other colleagues, listen, this is something that can be done. So we can use the artificial intelligence to complement the way we have worked so far. And finally, community. We have put together more than 300 colleagues in our group working with data in order for us to be able, in the end, to exchange all the lessons we have learned so far and to find a way and answer to the challenges the business lines are giving us every day. But then, just not to spend too much time, I just wanted to give you some real examples of what we are doing along the value chain. When it comes to our assets, so power generation, distribution, and trading, we are using artificial intelligence mainly to develop predictive maintenance algorithms. So predictive maintenance, it's something very specific for the type of assets you are talking about. For instance, when it comes to the distribution network, it's a very difficult use case to develop, but we are using weather forecasting in order to assess what the risk is of power outages. We are also using artificial intelligence in order to have in real time the actual situation of the grid, and to help our people from the control centers to identify which is the branches with the higher likelihood of being the responsible of the failure itself. We are helping people from our operation and maintenance by using anomaly detection algorithms to spot early, I would say, alarm in order to get prepared if something is going to happen. But we are also using artificial intelligence, for instance, to manage fraud detection when it comes to the distribution network. We are serving more than 73 million end users all around the world, so you can easily understand that you need something that is helping you in spotting what we call the non-technical losses, and is helping you in steering the inspection on field in order for you to then to save time of your field, of crew on the field, and so on and so on. And we are using random forest forecasting in order to be able then to spot what the inspections to be done every day are. Then customer, when it comes to the customer interaction, so as I said to you before, so artificial intelligence for us is very useful to make customer segmentation and to tailor specific retention activities on that specific customer. So not addressing the needs of a larger cluster, but to be able to have specific actions for a specific customer. And this is done actually by leveraging on the data we are retrieving from our customer interaction channel and applying then artificial intelligence algorithms. And we are using AI for a number of other use cases. Now we have more or less 200 AI models that are in production and that are part of our core processes. As another IT solution, a traditional one, I would say, and we are getting familiar with leveraging on this kind of technology in order to have things done better and better. And then the last 3 minutes, just wanted to give you some practical example of what we are doing. So 3 use cases. The first one dealing with our power generation assets, hydro assets in particular. And you can see that the name of this algorithm is Presago, and it's actually our predictive maintenance environment for hydro operation. And we have developed a number of key diagnostic indicators that are analyzed through anomaly detection algorithms that are directly managed by the people on field. So 70 O&M colleagues are actually managing this set of models in order to spot possible anomalies that can then lead to a failure. And you can see they have all information accessible in real time, and they can optimize the maintenance plan leveraging on this data, and they can also spot some, I would say, destructive failure that can then turn into unavailability of the plant. Then another case that is dealing with document management. So we as a utility, we are dealing with our customers and end users, and we have to process a lot of documents, both inbound and outbound. So instead of using human beings to spot relevant information into these documents, we are using now image recognition based on natural language processing and deep learning in order to analyze in a completely automated way our documents to retrieve all relevant information and then make the management of the documents automated. And then the final use case. We, as a utility, we are working, I would say, with the societies in which we operate, and for us, it's very relevant to have our reputation under control. This is why we have developed sentiment analysis algorithms that is actually surfing the web, the press, the social media, and so on and so on, every day in order to spot possible critical situations that we have to manage. And this information are then made available to our managers on fields in order to take proper actions and to avoid that this can lead to a real crisis. And this is actually everything from my side, and I really enjoyed the possibility of sharing with you this journey that for us is very, very, very important. So thank you and keep in touch. Here you can see my contact, and if you have questions, I'm here for you.
Thank you, Giuseppe. We have already received many questions, and then we will address those during the Q&A. But now we would like to move on to our next presentation, which will be given jointly by Vanessa Miller and Adina Braha-Honchus from Microsoft. So we would like to ask Vanessa to unmute your microphone, switch on your camera. We already see you there. Hi. And we give you also the presentation right so you can show your screen. Just very quickly, Vanessa is the Director of Energy Innovation and Impact at Microsoft Corporate Affairs and in the Environmental Sustainability team. So without further ado, I hand it over to you, Vanessa, please.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm excited for Microsoft to join your Electric Beyond Digital initiative. I wanted to start with some of visionary use of data that we just announced a couple weeks ago, and I think it will resonate very well with kind of all of the previous presenters' vision about the use of data and the amount of data that sometimes some of the most challenging problems of our time are necessary. And we announced on Earth Day a planetary computer. It's really, the idea is to map the ecosystem of the planet and use the data that's available to us, but not just Microsoft, to scientists, to universities, to a variety of, to startups, to a variety of stakeholders, to start kind of modeling the Earth's ecosystem and what's at risk and what has changed and what is changing over the course of the years and the future to come. And so for us, really, how, particularly my team, the reporting to the Chief Environmental Officer at Microsoft, is how can we use data, the power of data and AI, to solve some of the most important environmental problems. And I think energy is quite at the core of this, because energy sector contributes a large portion of greenhouse gas emissions. And so there is really the journey I want to take you on here is kind of a parallel journey between digitization and decarbonization, and we really see both kind of and that's why it's so exciting for us to kind of be part of this conversation here with your Electric, and kind of see how we can plug ourselves into also what's being discussed at the EU level around this journey of digitization and decarbonization. You all familiar with this, the 3 Ds, and decarbonization, digitization, and decentralization are accelerating kind of the countdown to a new energy world faster than expected. I think a previous presenter spoke about the pace and the need to adapt to kind of the flexibility that's required with AI. And this is, these 3 Ds are fundamentally altering how we produce, how we use, how we store and trade electricity. And this trend is kind of sweeping all regions of the world and transforming kind of every element of the energy system. And we believe kind of these 3 Ds really go hand in hand. And if one is not kind of fully delivered, then the other ones kind of will be injured. I'll start with kind of Microsoft sustainability journey, and I make it short because I know we're running a bit late. But first, we made a bold commitment earlier this year. We called it even a moonshot, kind of a public moonshot. We believe that carbon neutrality is not enough. And what do we mean by carbon neutrality? I imagine all of you in the energy sector is quite familiar, but it's not net zero. While they sound similar, they're different. A company can be carbon neutral with offsets, whereas a net zero means that a company will actually remove as much carbon as it emits. And we've decided to go beyond carbon neutrality, beyond carbon net zero, which we were on track before our January announcement, to be carbon negative. So we've pledged to be carbon negative by 2030. The previous slide that I'll just skip shows kind of our total metric ton of CO2 are about 16 million metric ton for all of our scope 1, 2, and 3, which for any utility maybe seems fairly small. And so we understand that we're only part kind of a broader effort to decarbonize the economy and particularly the power sector. And that's where I think there's something for us very powerful in the use of technology, is how we can work with customers and how we can work with partners to deliver some of the digital technologies that will help us within our four walls, but also our customers and our partner, so outside of four walls, decarbonize their own operations. So we've kind of work on a number of steps. We believe that transparency or creating the tools will be critical to basically deliver this decarbonization. And we've worked on, we announced in January also this Microsoft sustainability calculator that helps customers track the carbon emissions related to their Azure consumption. And this is not really the topic today, but there's definitely a lot of discussion around the energy consumption of the ICT sector and how it is both a challenge, but potentially it is also an opportunity as we can kind of all work to decarbonize that ICT energy consumption. So this is really also to help equip our customers make the informed decision of moving to the cloud and what's the carbon footprint that's related to the cloud. There's a lot of data analysis behind this, and obviously, as we all said, there's a journey, and so we're trying to refine kind of the underlying data behind the sustainability calculator, and whether we're using average carbon emissions to marginal carbon emissions, and how we're partnering with different stakeholders in the different markets where we operate to be able to deliver a sustainability calculator that really informs everybody or every company or customer's business decision or carbon decision if this is part of their vision. We also launched a 24/7 matching solution with Vattenfall. It's a first of a kind approach where we give the customers the ability to choose the green energy they want and to ensure that the consumption matches their goal using Azure IoT. And again, this new level of transparency can really enable users to adjust their business operations to better fit the availability of green energy they want to consume and at what time. As we all know, renewable energy is a variable intermittent resource, and it doesn't run 24/7, but a number of corporates and a number of customers want to run on 100% renewable energy. What does that mean on an hourly basis? So these are all kind of solutions that are powered with the cloud and with IoT, either sensors data as also previous colleagues alluded to. So if we want to decarbonize kind of the power sector, I've talked very specifically about solutions that are AI or ML powered that seem directly linked to kind of the decarbonization. But I think there is also a story which we're all part of here of how do we enable the systems to be more flexible. And I'd love to kind of continue this conversation with Eurelectric on how AI can deliver the flexibility to the grid that enables basically the decarbonization and us to meet our 2030 or 2050 targets. And that's what we've worked on with Adger Energy, where we announced a couple years ago a virtual kind of power plant and integrating multiple distributed resource, DERs, to be able to integrate more renewables without kind of adding infrastructure, particularly kind of substations. So creating a grid that's more flexible without increasing CapEx. And as pointed by others, CapEx is going to be a point of focus in the near time with COVID-19. Another way to kind of help deliver this decarbonization is how do we help reduce cost on the sources that are low carbon sources. And that's where we worked with Siemens Gamesa on kind of helping monitor maintenance remotely. These are pretty amazing towers. They're 120 meters high, about 400 feet high. They have rotor blades that span the height of 22-story building. And so they're very challenging to maintain. They're, in terms of human stress and resources, quite difficult. And so partnering with Siemens Gamesa and using drones that are taking thousands and thousands of pictures every day, using the power of data, we're able to kind of analyze these pictures taken by these drones. So at this point, there's more than a few hundred thousands of pictures, and using Azure AI in the cloud, again, we're able to kind of accurately model and predict the maintenance issues of the turbine and reduce cost of operation and maintenance. Which again, this we've seen a lot of interest from across the energy sector, but across all sectors really, with COVID-19, of remote first in line kind of workers solution, and I think this is certainly a trend we're going to see post COVID-19. So digitization applied kind of to the energy sector, like any other industry, raises a number of questions, and previous presenters have kind of alluded to what's the thought process to kind of take your company in that journey, and what are the regulatory challenges or philosophical challenges that we'll all have to ask ourselves. And I'll pass it to Adina to present kind of some of the principles that Microsoft as adopted as we're thinking about AI.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Hello, everyone. My name is Adina Braha. I'm part of Microsoft's EU Government Affairs team based in Brussels. I hope everyone is well and safe during this time. It's good to be with all of you today. So looking at the amazing and transformational benefits of using AI, I'd like to share in the next few minutes a few thoughts on our AI policy vision at Microsoft and reflect on some of the considerations around the legal governance that needs to be created in this space, which will definitely be key, as many of you mentioned, in bringing to life these scenarios while preserving our fundamental values. So the question we are confronted with is, how can we all enjoy the benefits of AI and build on it while making sure that it protects the people and it is used in a way that minimizes societal risk? And as previous presenters have said, we certainly don't claim to have all the answers. And as a matter of fact, we don't think that we as a society know all the questions yet. But we do need to work together, have the conversation, as Christine said at the beginning, and figure out how laws and regulations should address these emerging challenges in order to bring the scenarios to life and protect people at the same time. So we at Microsoft believe it all starts with ethics, and Microsoft has spent a lot of time thinking about how to deliver AI in a way that is responsible, is trustworthy and human-centric. And back in 2016, we led the industry in creating a set of human-centric principles to guide the ethical creation and use of AI. And you can see that now on the screen. This work really led to identifying this set of 6 ethical principles that guides our work. So it's principles like the importance of fairness to avoid bias and discrimination, principles that build on established areas of law, like privacy and security, like reliability and safety. And it's also principles that have been accepted everywhere around the world, like the importance of ensuring inclusiveness, making sure that technology and solutions work for everyone, including people with disabilities. And ultimately, principles like transparency and accountability, which are 2 key foundational principles in our view. So we're operationalizing, this AI principles at scale across Microsoft, and this is happening through what we call the Ether Committee. It's the Microsoft AI Ethics and Effects in Engineering and Research. It's quite a long acronym, and also through our Office of Responsible AI. So this committee, Ether Committee, is tasked with advising Microsoft's leadership around rising questions, challenges, opportunities brought forward in the development and fielding of AI innovations. And the Office of Responsible AI implements our cross-company governance and public policy work. So together, these 2 parts of the company, Ether and the Office of Responsible AI, they work closely with our engineering and sales teams to help them and everyone across the company to uphold Microsoft's AI principles in the day-to-day work. And I want to spend a minute, if there is time, to just reflect on the EU policy landscape and share a few thoughts on the EU vision and current regulatory landscape. So it's on the previous slide as well. There is no separate slide on that, but just a few words on the European Commission's work in this space. As many of you are aware, in February 2020, the Commission published its white paper on artificial intelligence, and they created a framework seeking to take an incremental and risk-based approach to AI regulation. And I'd like to highlight one element from the AI white paper, which is really relevant in this space. The white paper makes the point that the supply chain for AI products can be long and can include many actors, from the point of development of AI system to its deployment. And this point, we think, is extraordinarily important when thinking about the regulatory obligations. Take a typical healthcare scenario. Microsoft might develop an AI solution that a customer incorporates into a medical device, which that customer then sells to a hospital where it's used by a doctor in providing patient care. So there are shared but different responsibilities throughout this chain. So you can think about a similar scenario for the energy sector. So therefore, we really agree with the Commission in terms of the fact that regulatory obligations should be addressed to the actor in the chain that is best placed to address the potential risk involved. For example, while developers may hold an important important information, important role about the data sets used to train AI systems, it's only the deployer that may have the ability to monitor the system's operations and the impact from those operations once it has been released. So the same holds true for transparency. Developers are better placed to describe the capabilities and limitations of an AI system while disclosing the fact of AI use to people and to those likely to be affected by it will typically need to be the responsibility of the deployer. So I guess in a conclusion, for a regulatory system to work effectively, we think it will be important to allocate responsibility appropriately and be clear about which obligation apply to which economic actors. And while very important, we want to stress that we do need to think beyond regulation to make sure we address all the issues that AI systems can raise in the future. It will really be important for the industry to step up and work with others to advance the deployment, the development and deployment of AI system in a responsible and ethical way beyond working closely on the regulatory space. And then I want to spend just a minute on the next slide to mention the fact that, of course, the policy landscape for advancing our carbon efforts that Vanessa mentioned are going hand in hand with AI and digitizations. And in fact, of course, both digitization and the Green Deal are the main pillars of the EU's new growth strategy. And at Microsoft, we will use our voice to speak out both in terms of the AI framework, but also on the public policy issues that we think can advance the world carbon efforts. So we mentioned there on the slide, it includes expanding research efforts on carbon. It is also about pushing for the removal of regulatory barriers that enables and scale carbon reduction technologies. We also work on thinking about market and pricing mechanisms so that everyone can make more informed decisions about carbon. And of course, we think about how we empower consumers and customers through transparency and what are the universal standards that can be envisioned in that space. Thank you so much, and I look forward to your questions and the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adina, and thank you also, Vanessa, for these very interesting insights. We would like to now continue with a presentation given by Daria Mustafayeva, who is Eurelectric Strategic Communications Advisor. So we will make Daria you the presenter, and you can switch on your video and unmute yourself. Hi, Daria. Please go ahead.
Hello.
The microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, Marianne, for your introduction, and thank you to all the previous speakers for their insightful presentations. I would like to build on some of the messages that were already mentioned before, and I think that's a very good flow that we can agree on many points here and develop them further. First of all, I would like to say that indeed, European Green Deal and digital agenda are the top political priorities of the EU. And this first slide of my presentation illustrates this particular straightforward point. These two political priorities are led by two executive vice presidents of the EU, Frans Timmermans and Margrethe Vestager. I think that's already something that shows EU's commitment to those. And therefore, we hope that indeed this commitment will realize in specific policies. Moving forward, I would like to speak a bit more about European Green Deal. This is a flagship policy package of the EU at the moment. And we here at Eurelectric and all over Europe in power sector, we work on the strategies and legal acts within this Green Deal every day. So of course we know that digital agenda is interlinked very closely with the Green Deal. For instance, at the very beginning of the communication by the Commission, it mentions that digital technologies would be critical enabler for attaining the sustainability goals. And indeed, this is the case. Specifically for our sector, decarbonizing the energy system will require a lot of digitization tools. And EU also acknowledges investment challenge, which is great. And it means that a lot of investment has to be gathered to make sure that these funds are going to digital transformation and tools. At the same time, we should not forget about accessibility and interoperability of data, which would be at the heart of this data-driven innovation. As you can see, Green Deal clearly specifies the digital agenda is paramount. And recently also, EU linked digital agenda with its industrial strategy. So we can see that it all makes perfect sense. Going forward, we will discuss some specific digital agenda policies. So in February this year, as mentioned already by Dina, Commission came out with a package of policies related to data. One of them was data strategy. Published in February, it came out with this rationale that data globally will grow tremendously. By 2025, the growth will be fivefold in comparison to 2018. And this new data strategy initiative builds on the idea that digital technologies can help reduce global emissions by up to 15%, which is already great. And also the reduction in emission by 7 times of what ICT sector is projected to produce as emissions. For power sector as such, this specific strategy introduces so-called common European energy data space. This is the space in which data can be exchanged and can be made accessible. And related to that is an important strategy of the EU that is called Smart Sector Integration Strategy. It comes up a lot these days and it's projected to be published in June. We're very much looking forward to it and we are contributing also with our position to this strategy. It will also be related to the data strategy and exchange of data. Interoperability is also something that was raised a lot in electricity directive, and this is a good link with the specific electricity related legislation that needs to be respected and needs to be also reflected in the data strategy better. And of course, we should not forget about smart buildings and products. Those would help us integrate more renewables and would of course move this energy transition further. So at the moment, data strategy is in the consultation period, and by the end of this month, 31st of May, interested parties can submit their contributions and express their opinion, and Eurelectric will be one of them as well. As mentioned by the previous speaker, as a package as well was published AI white paper. This is a more specific strategic document that delves into AI issues. So one of the priorities of that document is to revise the so-called AI coordinated plan. That would be done by the end of this year if the plans are not derailed due to the COVID crisis, and the plan as such would be implemented until 2027. Here, the aim is to maximize the impact of investment in research in innovation. And the number that EU is putting forward is having 20 billion euros of total investment in AI in the EU per year over the next decade. It sounds great, but as we heard, Enel already invested 5 billion. So I'm not sure whether we maybe should think more about the numbers that are put forward. Energy in this specific white paper is qualified as a service of so-called public interest, together with transport, education, and waste management. On one hand, it means that energy is extremely important, which is obviously the case, But we would also like to see more mentioning of energy in the priorities for business development, and also what relates to citizens and empowering citizens to lead this energy transition. So of course, there is still quite some work to be done on the white paper, and indeed the contribution to this consultation will be crucial. At the moment, it's open until the mid-June this year. I would like to briefly mention some acts that relate to consumer protection and privacy. Since speaking about digital technologies and AI, we cannot forget those. Digital Services Act is a piece of legislation that was supposed to be put forward by the end of this year. Currently, it is likely to be postponed, but it would be a welcome addition to harmonize the single market for digital services. Another piece of legislation currently in the phase of being transposed in the member states' legislation is the New Deal for consumers. That also applies to contracts of electricity, and therefore we also would welcome its proper implementation. The privacy regulation has been on the table for over 3 years. The first initiative was published in 2017, and so far it has been rejected again by the EU Council. It also has a lot of consequences for energy companies, since it has to find a balanced approach. First of all, of course, ensuring privacy regulations, but also providing space for innovation. So we would like also this regulation to be more balanced. Going forward, I would like to discuss with you some of the priorities. If you look at all these strategies and legal acts that are in the pipeline of the EU, you can see that many of them are not necessarily addressed to the power sector, but they have a lot of implications. And we need to start from education and awareness. This has been raised by previous speakers, and I completely agree. First of all, in terms of labor market, we really need to close the digital skills gap. And here there is a big link to what was mentioned as well, is culture and public acceptance. As long as people know more about digital technologies and AI, they would be more open, and they would understand that they don't pose any threat, but rather can support them in performing their tasks, and also can support them in transition to decarbonized energy for our society. Ethical guidelines are extremely important, and I'm very happy that many companies are already thinking about those. Of course, there is an initiative on EU level of guidelines, and this human-centric approach should be at the core. As Christian mentioned, humans should be in the loop. Indeed, this is extremely important, and we should remember that AI and humans would have to coexist in the future. Cybersecurity, data protection, privacy, all these issues are challenging and can raise some anxiety within companies, but also with people, since we don't completely understand how these technologies work yet. And it's very important to make sure that the regulation is thorough, but also doesn't inhibit the innovation. And of course, we at the power sector here at Eurelectric, and also all over Europe and beyond, we need to have a better awareness of what AI means for us, how we can utilize digital technologies better, and how we can prioritize certain points for the moment and build on them further. On the policy level, it is extremely important that we are consistent, and that all the legislation that was created before is implemented in a consistent manner, and all the legislation that is created at this point is also going in the same direction. So I hope that during the time of work within this platform, we would be able to address those issues. I think they're of crucial importance. And I would like to finish with what we are going to do within the platform and what it means for our sector as such. So first of all, at this point, we're in the stage of analyzing and consulting with different stakeholders. So we're mapping out what is the policy landscape and who are the stakeholders that we should work with. And of course, we're building a community. I like this word a lot, and it was mentioned before. And indeed, it's the community that we build within our organizations, but also communities that we build with our partners and with policy stakeholders. It's extremely important that we work on a common vision within power sector. putting this sector on the map in issues of AI is paramount. Of course, AI is everywhere. It will be everywhere in the future, and it's a priority for our sector, and we have to identify those now. Furthermore, we would need to build on this vision and draft a white paper or a series of papers to define the steps, what's needed for the funding, what do we need exactly for innovation to go in the right direction, and which enabling regulatory framework is needed. Then we will engage with policy makers, and we will organize a series of events where we would deliver our messages to the highest level of EU institutions. And finally, in this whole process, it's extremely important to raise awareness and to connect. We need to find these linkages between business, policy, and technology and constantly strengthen them, since AI and its regulation is the field where everything comes together. My first slide was had a question mark, whether digital technologies are shaping the future. And the question mark doesn't relate to the shaping. Of course, they're extremely important and they're driving decarbonization, as Vanessa was saying previously. But at the same time, I believe that we are already in this moment and we're not talking about the future anymore. It is really the present. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daria. And due to the time constraints, we will just go immediately to the questions and answers session. We know that we are a bit behind our time, but we intend to still take some of the questions that we have received from the audience. And let's just all speakers and panelists now switch on their cameras. So we can see your video while you are answering the questions. Thank you. And let's just keep in mind that the answer should be as short as possible. So sort of elevator pitch answers, 1 minute per question. So I see that, for example, Christian Arnold, you are there already switched on your camera. Let me start by asking a question to you. This question is given by Alex Mahon, who is asking, what was the insight that made your board to switch from being a network operator to a platform provider? If you want me to repeat that, let me know.
No, I think I got the question. Thanks. First of all, I think it's not the one impact information which made this tremendous decision. I just tried to give an event which maybe characterized this kind of development, which is standing for this. We had a very intense dialogue with Sanjit Chaudhry, who is one of the top platform economists. And he advised us basically in terms of our digital strategy, and we learned a lot. And with this insight, we basically got a much better understanding on the value of the energy data potential actually, and what it actually means in terms of skills and development. So external advice at the end, and a lot of impressions of adoption, market development in other industries, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. And let me just turn now to Christian Ruby, our Secretary General here at Eurelectric. Can you share your thoughts on accountability and what are the main routes to accountability?
Well, I think that if you start from the point that an algo is essentially a political statement formulated as math, then you see the issue of accountability emerge. The specific characteristic of artificial intelligence is that computers are basically engaging in learning processes on their own, and the whole issue here is that they may learn things that make sense based on let's say the logic that they apply and the way that their neural network is structured. However, let's say the ethical calibration of that is needed afterwards. And as companies, we see many examples of computers learning stuff on their own, where at the end of the day you don't know exactly how they arrived at that conclusion, and so you let's say you see some of the oversight and the control, but you still are left with the accountability, whether it's applying AI solutions to accounting very concretely, or to deploying different types of solutions. All of a sudden you stand with these ethical dilemmas of how they've arrived at certain conclusions, because as a company you vouch for that. So what do you do in terms of ensuring accountability as a company? I think it's about, first of all, recognizing that here's a huge issue that everybody needs to address strategically. Then I think it's about transparency in the data sets that are used, and also the composition of the neural networks, so that you can go back and track how did they arrive at those conclusions. And then, as I said, I think it's about having humans in the loop. I read an interesting book by an Accenture consultant who basically argued that we need to have in pretty much every company from now on a chief ethical officer that basically has it as his chief function to have an ethical oversight of how this is going on in the companies, and how this is addressed, because you will increasingly, and as the pace also increases, be faced with those ethical dilemmas.
Okay, Vanessa, what do you think of Christian's response? Do you agree? Would you like to add something there in terms of accountability and the main routes to it?
Yeah, I'll pass it also to Adina, because she follows these questions a lot closer than I do. But certainly, I think what we try to do and implement at Microsoft with the Ether committee that Adina presented earlier is to acknowledge first that there are a number of questions that we have to ask ourselves, whether we'll be able to find solutions and stick to these answers. I don't know. I think we're all acknowledging that it is also a moving landscape, and so we'll need to kind of maintain that oversight and adapt over time, kind of continuously. But this is certainly a question that we're asking ourselves on everything that we do and touch with our customers, and trying to assess kind of the implication of the technology solutions we're designing and providing, or what is being asked of our solutions. I mean, Adina mentioned a number of kind of principles, but we've kind of come up with principles for AI across a number of sectors. We have specific principles for facial recognition. We have principles for the planetary computer that I talked about. So I think it's an ongoing work. But Adina, I'll let you add, because I know you know a lot more about it.
No, that's great, and I guess I would add that, you know, everyone has highlighted the complexity of this ecosystem, and I guess an important dimension of our approach to responsible AI in having the Ether committee and the Office of Responsible AI is having and putting together this ecosystem to operationalize the responsible AI across the company, rather than having a single organization or department or individual leading this work. And we think that is key, both in terms of our approach, but also our work with customers. And we also talked about the roles and responsibilities, and accountability is very much related to defining those roles and responsibilities for the teams involved in this effort, and only by having clarity in this definition, both in terms of who develops the AI, but also who deploys it. As I mentioned, the value chain is so complex, so unless we have that clear definition, it's very hard to think about accountability. So we think that work is very important. And then another principle stemming from here is the case management, which again is very important in our work at Microsoft. So reviewing the sensitive use cases, there will always be different use cases in different scenarios. So thinking about how those principles are applied, as Vanessa said, sector by sector and case by case, to ensure that our principles are upheld in the development of AI in different scenarios, that's also important.
Thank you very much, Adina. And let me turn to our utility speakers, starting with Mr. Amoroso from Enel. And the question is asked by Jürgen Meyerhofer, and he would like to know, what is the area where you see the highest impact when utilizing AI, and what is the area where AI implementation might be the hardest?
So impact, I would say, to me, AI is a fundamental part of the process we call energy transition. Why? Because the AI itself can become a product that will help both consumer and utilities to manage in a better way, I would say, the whole system, electrical system, as it will be when demand response will be at scale, flexibility measures will be at scale, so renewable deployment will be at scale, and so on and so on. On the other hand, I believe that from a technical point of view, so the distribution systems are, I would say, very, very complex. And so to find a way to have effective AI algorithms helping operators in field, it's very, very difficult. So we are lucky because we have solution in place, but I would say it's very, very difficult if compared with other sectors in which AI can be deployed easily, I would say.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Christian Arnold, would you like to add to that the areas where you see the highest impact when utilizing AI, and the areas where the highest and the hardest when utilizing AI? Christian, I think you are muted still, so you can unmute. Sorry, I think we cannot hear you.
No worries. Sorry for that.
Okay.
Yeah, and the problem is in front of the computer. I'm sorry for that. It's just me. No, basically, I would, go along with this opinion, and I would say it's we see it quite the same way. Let me put another view on that as well with the question we had up front to this. I think we always have to combine and see the equal way in terms of AI technology and the capabilities. What can we reach with technology? I think this will evolve over time, but the complexity it raises when you go in terms of the ethic discussion and the term of humanity, actually. So what do? We serve our customer, we serve people, we serve humans at the end. So if you use technology and you will approach the human being, you have also to have into account that the complexity, the emotional complexity, and the things you can solve in terms to your customer base is not just the way you use technology and distribute it as being a physical asset provider. You know how to deal with technology. The impact is much greater, and everything which goes into the direct communication and the service delivery layer to our customers, I think has to encounter that humanity, and the sense there is much more complex, and technology still has their borders.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to add to that before we move on to the final slides of the webinar? If not, then because of time, we would like to have this conversation for longer. For next time, we know that we will save more time for this interactive part of our online exchanges. If not, then you can now close your cameras, and we will have a couple of final slides before we can close this session. So I will share my screen. My screen. 1 second. Apologies for that. So before we close this session, then it is important to note that the upcoming online exchanges and in-person workshops that we will have. The next online session will be held on the 9th of June, and after that we will meet again on the 8th of September. These will be less webinar type of presentations and more interactive and workshop-alike sessions where all the platform members can exchange their thoughts and give feedback, and there will be more of an analysis going on. These will be followed by physical workshops at the European Utility Week end of October, and then a high-level event and the workshop in Brussels end of November. And we will finalize the phase 1 of this platform at our Power Summit next year. So it is extremely important for all of you to be contributing to this, and those of you who want to be part of the platform, please get in touch with us to sign up, because only this session was freely accessible for all, and the following sessions are accessible for platform members only. Sorry. And before we close this session, we want to make another announcement of the upcoming Euroelectric online debate. So on 25th of May at 11 o'clock Brussels time, we will have very high-level, top-tier CEOs talking about the COVID-19 impacts and on the power sector and on the broader green agenda. So soon on our website and social media accounts, you will find more information about this session. So make sure that you sign up if you're interested to attend. And that's it. We thank you very much for your time, and we hope to see you soon at our next peer exchange on 9th of June. Thank you and goodbye.